Have you ever looked around and realized that you were just going through the motions? You were smiling and showing up and doing what you should, but feeling completely disconnected from who you are. That was me just under 4 years ago. I had lost my spark, and as my uncle put it, I had lost the light in my eyes. And I remember the things that used to fire me up, get me excited, they just didn't even register anymore. But I learned something really powerful. You can't lose your spark forever. You can reignite it. And today I'm going to share exactly how I did it. So, before we dive into this episode, if you're in a season where everything feels flat and heavy and you're ready to feel alive again, that's the work I do with women inside my one-to-one coaching program. Together, we rebuild your confidence, we connect you to your purpose, and create a plan that makes you excited to wake up again. So, I want you to click the link below to book a free clarity call, and let's help you find your spark again. Okay, so we're gonna dive in. I'm gonna first talk about the season or moment that made me realize I had lost my spark and what did numb actually look like for me in my day-to-day life. So I realized that I had definitely started to lose my spark, and this was shortly after becoming a mom. If you already have kids, you'll know that it's such demanding work to be a mom. Not only is it physically demanding, you're breastfeeding, you're giving away your nutrients to your little baby, but it's also just energetically really hard to go from being a woman and a wife to being a mother, because you're also juggling all the balls, whether you are working full time or you own your own business like I did. It was just really an exhausting period of life. And I felt like I was trying my best to be there for my son, to show up for my friends, to show up for my business. But I felt like my energy was really being pulled down and sucked out. My son had such a great temperament when he was a baby, so it was nothing to do with his personality, but it was more so just because of the amount of balls that I was trying to juggle and keep in the air. I just felt like there wasn't enough time for me, the things I used to do, which was mostly like quiet and being away from other people and really refilling my own cup through journaling and things like that. I wasn't able to do as much of because I didn't have as much space, as much time as I used to. And so I had to really get honest with the fact that I didn't feel like I used to. I also, once I became a mom, started to get a little bit scared in the sense of I was still trying to figure out my identity, and I still had these big dreams on my heart. I still had these desires for my business. I still had these desires to live a beautiful life where it was filled with adventure and spark and joy and fun things. I didn't want to just go through the throes of monotony. And that was things like waking up, having the same breakfast, and then going through traffic to get to work, and then going to work for clients and knocking off and picking up my son and going home and just zoning out for a couple hours and then making dinner and then going to bed. I didn't want that to be my life forever. It felt so boring. It felt so predictable. It just didn't feel like the life that I had imagined I would live. And so I started to ask questions about my identity in that season. I didn't want to just be all consumed by being a mom. I wanted it to be an important part of my life, but I also wanted to make sure that I was prioritizing my dreams and making sure that I actually made room for myself. And so that was a really crucial time for me. I had my son in 2018, and around 2019, I started to really ask myself those questions like, what is it that's going to light your life up? I really feel as moms, as parents, that we still need to prioritize our own dreams, our own goals, because our children are watching us and they're learning from us. They're learning how we experience this life, how we are showing up with gratitude and excitement and joy, or if we're just overwhelmed and stressed out and snappy all the time. I really do believe that our kids can internalize all of the things that are happening in their environment. They're learning from all those little clues that we're leaving about what a successful life looks like, what a successful marriage looks like. And I think that we owe it to them to really live a life that is beautiful, because if we don't, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to figure out what that looks like. So I remember at that time, I was working with a lot of different coaches. I was doing all the right things. I was investing in myself. I was investing in my business, but it still felt like I wasn't really moving the needle very far. And I had gotten onto a call with a coach who I was working with at the time. And she told me, it's like you're pushing a boulder up a hill. and you're trying so hard, you're doing all the right things, you're putting in the work, you're putting in the time and the effort, but you're barely moving because you have all of this stuff, this weight on your shoulders. And so that was a really strong wake up call. I still remember that call really vividly. And I think that it really did motivate me to decide to change some things so that I could actually live in a state of flow and not in this state of overwhelming burden and hardship. I wanted to really set the best example possible for a life well lived to my kids, for myself, and even my grandkids one day. I want to have the best stories to tell them about the kind of woman that I was, the kind of life that I lived, and the lessons that I learned along the way. So for me, I would say that there were a few choices or moments that helped me to start to feel alive again. And one of the biggest ones was actually not something small, it was something pretty big. I decided to move halfway around the world with my son and my husband, and we started a whole new life. And it was in this environment that I started to come alive again. I started to heal. I started to actually design the life that I wanted. I started to be really intentional about how my life looked like from the morning to the evening. I started to incorporate things that I always said I wanted to do, and I actually started to do them. And so I always wanted to be someone that woke up and exercised. I wanted to be someone who had time for self-care. I wanted to be someone who had time to spend with friends and do fun things and to go to concerts or festivals or even just activities with the kids on the weekends. I wanted to be that person. And that's thankfully the kind of life that we've been able to create out here. I am just so thrilled and grateful and blessed that I started to make those small intentional changes after we moved, after I was in a healthy environment, and after I was in a place and a space and a community where I felt like I could thrive. I started to just learn from the people around me. There were people that were living just really beautiful lives, and I started to take on some of those things that they were doing. And so self-care became a really important part of my week. Exercise has now become a daily practice between Monday and Friday for me, which is incredible. Things like recovery, I had never done or even heard of before. So recovery is when you, after exercising, you do things like ice bath or sauna. I have started to do that once a week, and I only do the sauna part because I do not like the cold, but it's just a really cool thing to get to do and to bring that spark back to detox and just treat my body like a temple. And so all of these things, I would say the big thing was the move, but I could have made the move and it could have made no difference because all the small little changes that I also had to make to be intentional and design a life that I really love. And so the last thing I want to talk about in this video is how can women start to rediscover joy when they feel disconnected from themselves? I honestly think that the most important thing that we have to start with is within. We have to really get to know ourselves, and we have to stop accepting that there is only one way that our lives should look. We're sold this lie, we're sold this program that there is only one way for us to live a successful life. And so we go through all of the things. We have kids, we get married, we go to college, not in that order, obviously, it depends on you and your life, but there's just these prescribed things that we're told that we have to do, and we try to tick them off. And then we realize eventually that we are unique and that specific recipe is not going to work for every single one of us. And I think that honestly, women need to get to know themselves. They need to really be intentional, ask themselves the hard questions, especially this day and age. Not everyone wants to have kids. I have a best friend who just doesn't want to have kids. She realizes that it would really take so much from her life, her quality of life, her ability to travel where she wants, and even her relationship with her husband. They're just so close, and she just realized that kids is probably not in her future, but she's going to be like the awesome rich auntie, and I love that for her. And so I think that it's just incredible that we actually have these options these days, because it wasn't really something that was even spoke about even 5 or 10 years ago. So when I was having my son, I really don't remember many women speaking up about being child-free by choice. I feel like there was just so much pressure once you get married. There's just people that are constantly asking you, all the aunties and uncles come out and say like, hey, when are you guys having kids? When are you having kids? And eventually you realize that you have to take ownership for your own choices. If not, you're definitely not going to start to live a life that is aligned and beautiful. And so, in addition to learning and asking yourself those hard questions and really being honest about what it is that you want, what it is you want your life to look like, what brings joy, meaning, success to your life specifically, then I would say start to design your routine around that. And so, whatever you've learned about yourself, whatever you've learned about what brings you joy, what makes you feel alive, I want you to start to be intentional about creating those moments, those pockets of joy in your day. So, maybe not everyone is desiring to move halfway across the world to start this new life and live in this different environment and experience this different adventure. But maybe there are pockets of joy that you can have in your life wherever you are that will just start to bring that spark back, start to make you feel connected to your body again, start to make you feel excited to wake up in the morning. And so that could be everything from leaving a job that doesn't fit. It could be anything from just changing your routine, filling your day with nutritious food so that you feel more energetic. It could be even just prioritizing your health and exercising. There's so many different ways, and all of us are so unique. And so, what brings me joy and meaning is not going to work for you. Once we start to ask ourselves those questions and then design our day around what we've learned about ourselves, what we know for sure about ourselves and who we are, then everything else just starts to fall into place. And so, what I realize is your day doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can have even like 15 minutes of joy, that can honestly make such a big difference. So, things that have worked for me in the past can be really small things like a cup of hot matcha latte with oat milk or kombucha, or even just something like taking a walk in nature and just trying to be present. I really hope you got something for this episode. I want to tell you, you are not broken. You're just being invited to come back home to yourself. So if you're ready to feel clear and confident and connected again, I want you to book a clarity call at the link below, and let's help you to rebuild your life from the inside out. Talk to you soon.